As you just heard, we are recording today's presentations, and they will be posted. The recording and the presentations will be available on NERC's website probably by tomorrow. But I am delighted to have everybody participate in this forum. This is really a chance for all of us to talk about reuse and how to make it work, what difference it makes for communities and how to make it work. This is the first in a series that we are developing. We're calling it the Material Reuse Deep Dive Forum Series because it's a chance for us to really get into the weeds, to start talking a lot of detail about the topic of materials reuse. My name is Mary Ann Remolador, and I'm the Assistant Director for the Northeast Recycling Council, which is also known as NERC, and many of you know us better by that name. We work, we're a nonprofit organization. We work with the 11 Northeast states on sustainable materials management issues, which include research and projects and programs and initiatives on source reduction, reuse, recycling, organics management, and green purchasing. And I'm just going to ask anyone who is not muted, that is not a speaker, to please mute yourself. Thank you. Our board of directors are made up of the state environmental agencies for the Northeast states, and our advisory members are businesses, trade associations, municipalities, nonprofits, and consultants. So because we have a mixture of state and business or industry together working on various topics throughout the Northeast, we have a unique NERC's as an organization is unique in that we have built this very strong network throughout the region, and we bring together people, a lot of different types of people, but all that are somehow connected to sustainable materials management, to learn from each other, to share information, and to hash out different pieces as needed. Many people say this does not work in other parts of the country, but for some reason it's working for us and has. We've been in existence for about 30 years now. For this series, the Materials Reuse Forum Series, which will be quarterly, by the way, so you'll be hearing from us even after this forum about our next one. NERC is working with a planning committee of reuse professionals from around the country. And I just want to thank all of them because they have worked tirelessly to help define and identify speakers and to really work through what would be some of the most important topics for people working in reuse. And they all bring a wealth of knowledge to the table, and yet are making time to work on this initiative. And we are truly thankful to them. When we talk about materials reuse, I just want to make sure everyone is clear about what we are talking about. We are referring to the reuse of durable goods. So we're talking about construction materials, consumer and household items, electronics, books, textiles, fixtures, and furnishings. Other people refer to it as tangible items. And today we have three presenters. And Nancy, if you are on today's call, if you could just let me know Um, um, we have three presenters: Nancy Meyer, CEO and Executive Director of Community Forklift. Community Forklift is a successful grassroots reuse enterprise in the Ports Towns community of Prince George's County in Maryland, which is just minutes away from DC. And she also researches and writes on reuse as a platform for local, social, and environmental justice. Terry McDonald is the Executive Director of St. Vincent de Paul Society of Lane County, which is a nonprofit in Eugene, Oregon, that provides an array of social services to 80,000 people annually. Under his leadership for 38 years, St. Vinny's has developed multiple reuse and recycling businesses, generating $53 million in gross revenue for the organization. With more than 50 years of experience in waste-to-cash enterprises, McDonald also oversees St. Vincent's mentoring arm, Cascade Alliance, which helps other nonprofits develop successful waste-based businesses. And our third presenter is Karen Jane, who is the CEO of Stardust. While at Stardust, she has increased the diversion rates of usable building materials and launched the Gifts in Kind program, which has distributed more than $85 million worth of reusable household items to fellow nonprofit organizations. She holds a master's degree in business administration from Regis University in Denver, Colorado, and serves as a board member to the Arizona Recycling Coalition. I want to welcome all of you presenters today. And Terry, why don't we start with you? I'm going to stop sharing my screen. If you could please share your screen.
Yeah, perfect. Hi there. I presume I'm up and running.
You are.
Oh, good. Well, I'm Terry McDonald. I'm the director of St. Vincent de Paul of Lane County. We do a variety of human resources projects associated with this community: homeless services, service for very low-income people, about 1,600 units of affordable housing scattered out throughout the state of Oregon. And what really supports those efforts, of course, is the business enterprises, which is a typical thrift industry. So we have 12 thrift stores, but we also have branched out into a lot of reuse of other products. So whether it's polystyrene recycling, we do about 60 tons of polystyrene per year, or if it's reusable materials or books or anything else, all those products feed into our business portion of our organization. As it says, as we said, our revenues are around $52 to $53 million a year. About 60% of that is from businesses, whether it's a used car lot or it's a mattress rebuilding operation or a mattress recycling operation. That's where all of those funds are generated from. So we'll see if I can get to the next slide.
Spacebar.
Spacebar. Oh, there we are. So as we say, we have a variety of enterprises. We process a lot of reusable materials, of course, for our thrift store operations, which generates a fair amount of income on its own. We also are the largest mattress recycler in the United States. So we currently operate in Northern California and in Oregon, and we process between anywhere 350 to 500,000 mattresses a year. So we've been doing that for about the last 22 years in Oregon and California. And that particular process was developed by us as the first commercially viable mattress recycling operation in the United States. And we helped, of course, mentor the folks in Connecticut to set up their operations in Bridgeport, Connecticut. All of this is dependent upon the labor force that we have. And we have a staff of total as an organization, about 700 employees in the business portions of it, about 60 of them in California and about 300 in Oregon. Associated with the various business enterprises. But we've found that the waste stream is really an asset. The asset is wide and deep, and the waste stream that if you can gather product out of it can be everything from box springs and mattresses, shoes, belts, purses, dishes, pots and pans, cars, anything, auto appliances. Any of those things have a value in the marketplace. And if you discipline the stream to get that product into your organization, it allows you to create a business enterprise. This business is sustainable. We've been doing it since 1955, which is when we were incorporated. It continues to grow at around 10% rate per year, and it continues to diversify into new product bases that are out of the waste stream. The waste stream truly is a great asset. So we have, just in Lane County, the mattresses, we do about 965 tons of mattresses. And in California, a lot more than that, just because there's so many mattresses in California, they have product stewardship bill. And we just have currently passed a product stewardship bill similar to California's in Oregon. So across the board, it creates a real opportunity to create a sustainable and growing business enterprise that really can change people's lives. And this is the kind of stuff that we process, all kinds of products across the board. Many of them are being upcycled back into new products, including the styrofoam and the candles and things like that are turned into the products that we manufacture ourselves. So it's a very sustainable business, and one continues to grow across the board. How much have we diverted? That's the kind of diversions that we're doing. So any given day, St. Vincent de Paul is processing in one form or another about 100 to 120 tons of stuff. That's what we do for a living. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. That was quite a story. I'm still catching up. Okay, Nancy, if I could ask you to go next, please. You're on mute, Nancy.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. That's quite an act to follow. Hi, Terry. Quite an act. St. Vincent de Paul is an amazing model for the country, really. So I'm going to talk a little bit about community forklift, and I'll get the slide deck up. Let's see. Okay. I might need your help. If I do. Open. Okay, now. Share screen. Here it is. Yep. Okay, great. Well, first thing I just wanted to mention was the incredible work that Mary Ann has done to pull this together. She gave a lot of credit to the members of this committee, but the truth, in fact, is the incredible work that she's done and her commitment to both recycling and reuse and sustainability. So Mary Ann, thank you for that. So I run an organization called Community Forklift. We are located in the Port Towns community, about a half mile from the DC line.
Can I see it?
I'm good, yeah.
You can see it?
Uh-huh. Actually, let me take this off now. We had a COVID situation today. So anyway, so we are located outside of DC, and unlike St. Vincent de Paul, we are one site located in an under-resourced community outside of DC. We're in a 95% persons of color, 5% white community with a below average level of income in our community. So our focus is to act as a vehicle, a very grassroots organization embedded in our community, to be part of our community, to be a comprehensive resource to turn waste, the waste economy, the waste assets into resources, both for people and for place in our community here. Okay, let me go back here. Okay, so here's the outside of Community Forklift. The front of the building is a historical building. And yes, that distressed front is a fashion statement. We intentionally have it look that way, and that's where our offices are. In the back is a 35,000 square foot warehouse where we also have a lot of the same materials that Terry talked about. We're not so much focused on typical household goods. We really do focus on the value and the important resourcefulness of essential building materials for particularly for our community. We also do some household goods as well, and we do also a lot of higher end goods. And that has in part to do with the kind of community that we're in Washington, D.C. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. So here's a picture of a couple spots inside our warehouse redistribution center. We really focus on maximizing the perception and ideas and the value of the materials that we're acquiring and redistributing. Here's a picture in our yard of our staff, so you can get a sense of the diversity of the staff. Most of the staff that we work with live within just a couple miles of our facility. So our goal here is really to demonstrate the value of community-based revitalization based on the waste economy. And that is really capturing the value of used building materials and redistributing them. And we really see that redistribution as activating all kinds of opportunities in the community. And that's whether it's jobs, resources, intellectual capital, and so forth. Okay, so here we are, we're basically serving, we are embedded in an under-resourced community, but we're also serving the entire DC region of about 6 million residents. That community itself is a majority person of color community, about 45% white. And interestingly, there's a higher than average income and also a high level of income equality. And our business model is really based on understanding how we are located, and that is that we provide essentials at extremely below market prices for our under-resourced community while maximizing the opportunity and high value product that we receive from folks with more resources in the DC area. So our like I mentioned, the facility is 35,000 square feet of retail and programming space. And typically the other function for our organization has been to act as a community center. We act as a place to aggregate the materials, but we also, it's a place where we bring people together. We've done that now during COVID, we put some of this on hold, but typically we do events and workshops. Everything's free to educate people both about sustainability, about environmental issues, and about reuse and recycling. We have about 6,000 square feet of office space, 16,000 square feet of warehouse and storage space. We also run an additional business that's an online sales e-commerce business that's been doing very well. And we have about 3/4 of an acre of yard space for sales and storage. This gives you most of the reuse facilities across the country are similar to Community Forklift in that they're 1 or 2 substantial facilities with a lot of large areas for bulk items like appliances, cabinet sets, furniture, those kinds of things. Oh, let me just mention, we are also located on a brownfield site, and the brownfield site is a contaminated site. And so we are not only just repurposing the materials that come to us, but at the moment we're really repurposing the place where we're located. It's a place that's hard to use for different kinds of typical either commercial or residential uses, but the use for a reuse facility is just a perfect kind of match. So we have 35 full-time staff. We had more than 50 pre-COVID. Right now, we are not utilizing our volunteers because of still managing issues related to COVID. Part of our program is that we have starting wages of $17 an hour plus full benefits. We are really committed to ensuring that the staff have livable wages, and that's a central part of our mission. We started, actually the typo in here, we started in 2005. We've been in operation almost 16 years, and we're currently open 12 to 5. Those were our COVID hours. Our pre-COVID hours were 9 to 7, but we've actually been doing very well with the actually shorter hours. Our budget is $3.2 million. We earn about 85% of that budget, which is about $2.7 million. We have 7% in public support, 5% from private foundations, about 2% of individual support. We also have a congressional earmark moving through Congress right now for just for about $750,000 to start a deconstruction project, which there are no deconstruction activities or not much happening in the DC area. And from 2019 to 2021, we were able to generate a pretty significant reserve, which really helped with the financial stability of the organization. So Terry talked about diversion. So here's our representation of diversion. We recovered an estimated $45 million of building materials since we opened. We are really, really interested in how we relate with the public. And so we do spend considerable amount of time figuring out how to market and share information that we have. So you'll see our 2021 waste diversion fact sheet. And we use icons, monuments, things that people are familiar with in the DC area to share how much of those materials we've actually diverted. And you can see we've been actually doing a really fabulous campaign called Monumental Reuse in DC, help funded through the DC government, using the Washington Monument, and these kind of metrics and formulas that we pulled together to share kind of interesting facts and figures about reuse. And then finally, just because I think it's really helpful, and the waste economy is just so versatile and it's such a fabulous opportunity for development in people and places. And you'll see here on this chart, sort of just a summary, and I'd be happy to provide this to people, sort of all the comprehensive benefits that reuse can provide in our effort to lift communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Again, a wealth of information, and that just gives us so much to think about, at least for me. And just so everyone who came in after I said this earlier, we will be making all the presentations available afterwards, probably by tomorrow. So just hang tight there for all of this great information. And next, I'd like to ask Karen if you would share your screen.
Let's see, does that, everybody can see that?
We can see it, but it's not in power, it's not in slideshow
Oh, yeah.
mode.
Sorry, I shared the wrong thing. Let me try again.
Okay.
Let's try this one. There we go. And I can get it to go into.
We now see your notes, Nancy, Karen.
See, there we go.
There you go.
Always an adventure.
Yeah.
Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me. I'm Karen Jane, the CEO for Stardust. And Stardust was founded in 1997 by a local philanthropist and his wife, Jerry and Debbie Bisgrove. And they had purchased a home in an affluent neighborhood in the Phoenix metro area, and they had planned to gut the house and were headed out for the weekend. So they told their friend that she could take whatever she wanted from the house. When they came back from their trip, they went and took a look at the house, and she had actually gutted it. And so they asked her, well, what did you do with everything? And she said, well, I put some of it in my own home. I sold some of it to people I know, and I gave the rest to people in need. And so that's how Stardust was formed. The Bisgroves put up the seed money for our organization with the stipulation that Stardust be in our name because they own the Stardust Foundation and the Stardust companies. So that's why we're called Stardust. And so we've been in business for 25 years. We operate 2 local reuse centers. There's one here in Mesa, Arizona, and one in Glendale. Both are suburbs of the Phoenix metro area. We're open 6 days a week to the public, and our core business is around promoting reuse of cabinet sets, appliances, windows, doors, and other related building materials. Annually, we divert about 10,000 doors and 33,000 feet of cabinetry from our local landfills. And in total, we divert over 5,000 tons of usable material from landfills that go back into the community to help folks. We have 28 paid staff and over 50 volunteers supporting our work. Our annual operating budget is $2.2 million, and 95% of our revenue is generated from sales of donated materials, with the other 5% supporting our Gifts in Kind program, which distributes usable material to other nonprofit organizations. We operate several programs. One is our deconstruction program. And in 1997, two of our staff members went around in a small pickup truck and visited local construction and remodeling projects and picked up excess materials. So that's how we started. About 15 years ago, we added deconstruction services. So we have a fleet of 5 trucks. 2 of those trucks go out into the community every day and deconstruct mostly residential projects prior to remodeling, and most common is kitchen and bathroom remodeling. And these teams remove the usable material. We do charge a nominal fee, and the homeowner donates the product back to us, and it gets processed through our reuse centers and set up for resale. We also have donation pickup services. So we have two trucks that go out every day and pick up donations from folks who either wanted to deconstruct themselves or had their contractor do it, or we also pick up furniture. And then we have a Gifts in Kind program that distributes about $25 million worth of usable material every year back into the community. These materials are donated by large retailers like Amazon and Walmart, and we help about 200,000 individuals every year with material resource needs. We actually ultimately envision a future that has no waste, a community where we are sustaining through resources reused or redistributed. And we welcome the opportunity to work with other organizations, both government entities, businesses, and nonprofits to advance this mission. We do have a program that I was talking about earlier before we started today, and it's called our Valley of the Sun Deconstruction and Reuse Work Group. And we meet monthly and have folks from across the country share their experiences with deconstruction and creating deconstruction ordinances and incentives in their communities. And I'll put it in the chat. You're all welcome to join us. It's a virtual event. It happens on the second Monday of every month. We've got a couple of features lined up for the next 3 months. In September, we'll have our Scottsdale, Arizona Sustainability Director sharing their view of the sustainable future for their community, and also talking about their implementation of the Green Building Code, which will promote deconstruction in the Scottsdale area. In October, we have a presenter who's going to share creating a reuse resource center. And in November, Urban Ore will join us and talk about their work in diverting usable materials. So I'll put that information in the chat. If you're interested in joining us, please register. And thank you very much.
You're on mute.
Sorry, everybody. What I was saying was that we've got a lot to talk about. And I'm going to start with the first question for each of our presenters. If they could briefly tell us, how do you reach out and connect with the community that you are working in? Nancy, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Yeah. So we are really we have become an integral part of our local community. So folks are in our facility regularly, sometimes daily. Typically, we've had workshops, events on site to bring people together. That's been a really important part. Sometimes those facilitators or small businesses are part of the events or leading the events or providing materials for community members. So partly there's a real kind of connectivity that we're trying to create in our local communities through the activities that we're doing. Like Stardust, we also have a sort of a we call it community building blocks in our HELP program. That's also a key part of our relationship with the community. We're providing essential building materials for people who don't have them. So often it's a case in our community that people don't have working refrigerators. They don't have a place to store their insulin. They don't have a working stove. And we now do deliveries of those materials as well, because that's been another problem. But the big thing for us is the kind of relationship we have with the community, and also our staff are drawn from our local community. And we have also been involved in a number of environmental justice issues within our community as well. There was a struggle regarding the development of an industrial plant here that would have been highly polluting. And both the organization and a number of the staff and community members all worked together to fight that, and we won, which is really great. So we see ourselves that part of our function is a place to both learn and grow, both having political knowledge, local knowledge, and a vehicle for people to come together and connect, and actually having the brick and mortar places where this can happen become a vehicle, because there's so few places in real time anymore where people can come together that doesn't cost any money. And one interesting example was during COVID. I was downstairs on the floor, and every day I saw this one person. I saw a lot of people, but this one person in particular, every day she was there. And I finally asked her, and I said, you're here every day. And she goes, yeah, it was like a mall. She was coming just to walk. She needed a safe place to walk during COVID. So she was coming here. So, for us, it's not just facilitating and capturing the value, it's also providing a place where people are valued as well. And so that's part of the education and the outreach that we're doing, and bringing people together is to make that really alive in our community.
Karen, do you want to go next on that question?
Sure. We connect in a couple of ways, but quite frankly, the biggest way is word of mouth. We don't have a huge advertising budget or marketing budget, so we do a lot of social media. We have a really robust nonprofit network developed from our Gifts in Kind program. So those folks connect with each other, and being out in the community in the nonprofit sector is helpful in growing that resource and connection, so that more agencies understand the material resource available to them. And then in terms of deconstruction and material reuse, deconstruction specifically, we do have a business development manager who is out in the community developing relationships with local general contractors who are specifically focused on remodeling. We're members of local associations that are focused on remodeling and flipping houses. And it's really a lot of talking to people and building relationships. That is how we get connected. But I don't want to sugarcoat it. It's a tough business. I don't know if Nancy or maybe Terry has a different experience, but Nancy may have the same experience as I. Building material reuse is a break-even proposition. It is a tough business. It's not easily funded, at least in our community, because so much of your revenue is generated by resale. The funder and also the donor who's giving you materials is not as inclined to give you financial support.
Thank you, Karen. And Terry, how about you? How do you get the word out to people about your programs?
Well, so we're kind of a heritage organization in the community. So our emergency services part of the organization gives us a lot of outreach through shelters and our housing programs. So people know us as a result of that. And if we want to reach out and say, hey, we need this or that for that type of program base, the community generally provides it. We also are very careful in making sure that we make alliances with the solid waste district. So we tend to try and act as the answer man for the community in terms of how we're going to get problem materials out of the landfill. So whether it's
Rose.
Yeah, Terry froze a little bit. See if he comes back.
developed a model on how
There
to
you
do
go.
that. And so we're now able to process, as I say, literally tons of styrofoam, enough to fill a football stadium per year. And that's a very lucrative business for us. Or CFC gas recycling for appliances. That's a whole changing process on that, since they're going away from chlorofluorocarbons to ammonia-based systems. How are you going to recycle that gas? Well, we're in the process of developing that for them. Or mattresses. The industry has mattresses they want to get out of the waste stream. And so we developed the systems for that. But basically, you just peel the waste stream one stream at a time. And you basically say, take a problem material and say how we're going to turn it into a profit. Likewise, of course, the thrift industry has its drive-through donation areas, and we generally drive the public into our donation areas by saying, by the way, if you need to get rid of your number 2 plastic, if you need to get rid of your styrofoam, if you need to get rid of some other trouble materials like hazmat, we will take that. And when they come through my drive-through area, they also drop off the other stuff that I want, which is dishes, pots, and pans, and housewares. So it gives us a multiple way to engage the community based upon what our needs of the moment are.
Mhm.
Hey, Marion, can I say something else?
Sure.
Yeah, I wasn't really focusing on sort of the outreach marketing piece. So I wanted to just say a little bit about that we have spent a lot of energy on that recently. And Karen, I agree with you 100%. And but we have been focusing more on some of the outreach and marketing. So for example, I don't know if you guys, well,
Can't really see it. Yeah.
you can't, I put it maybe in front of my face. Anyway, what I want to share, and I encourage you all to go to Community Forklift website. We do extensive social media, and I appreciate, when you have a brick and mortar sites, like Terry and Jane, it's like bringing people in, of course, is almost the best opportunity. But we have done really a lot with social media, and we have found it to be extremely effective. And part of it is having clever, interesting ways to translate information and data about what we know about what we're doing to people, to excite people and get people interested in what we're doing. We have some great models of fact sheets, all kinds of campaigns. We have this one, you can't cook dinner in a cold oven. Right. So Karen's smiling because, people go to the food bank and people that are funding foundations that will fund emergency food, don't understand the need for the kind of product that we're providing to people. So we developed a campaign that says, you can't cook that food in a cold oven. You can't keep your insulin in a warm refrigerator. And it was really helpful to have people translate and understand, the critical, not only just the critical nature of what we're doing, but how they can also participate in helping to change this stuff. So anyway, I just wanted to add that on the marketing end and the outreach end, often that's given, and we did too for a long time, Short Thrift. We really started doing this outreach, and it also helped our donations process because it preceded, like when you send out your business manager to talk to a contractor, if they've seen something in a local publication or their local trade association thing, they're like, oh yeah, what was that? What's that Stardust? What is that? Kind of thing. So anyway, there's a lot that could be talked about this part of the industry, because part of it is helping us do what we're doing. The other part is this continuous process of educating the public of the importance of participating in recycling and reuse in general, and the transition of the economy, really.
So we have quite a few questions coming in. One is, do any of you have data on what percentage of reusables in your community that you are capturing? So anybody want to take this?
We got pretty good data on that. So on the reusables portion of it, remember, we also are at the transfer site and dumps. And so we know what's going in, and we divert away from those directly, as well as getting it from the community. So we get a pretty good accurate picture of about 90 to 95% of all textiles are being reprocessed out of the landfill. And on the dishes, pots, and pans and miscellaneous, probably about 60-65%. Depends on the quality of the product. But books and media, We're recycling at about 80% of all that. So yeah, it's doing okay.
Terry, can you talk a little bit about what you mean by you're at the landfills and the transfer stations?
So if you go to one of our local transfer sites, the largest one is in this area, you will find an attended collection center from St. Vincent de Paul at that site. And so before the people go to the pit to drop the product off, they drive by my attended collection center where we placard up and say, you can either pay to get rid of it or you can give it to us and we'll take it and give you a tax receipt. So we make sure that at those transfer sites and dumps around the county, that we have attendants out there for the larger ones and then unattended sites for the smaller ones in the rural parts of the state that will receive product and try and divert it. So our attendants have a really good picture of what's going into the pit.
Mhm. Thank you, Terry. Karen or Nancy, do you want to add to that? Karen?
In Arizona, it's difficult to get data related to construction materials. The facilities that take construction waste are privately held and don't share that data. So I don't have data that tells you what percentage is going into landfill versus what we're saving, other than I can tell you what we're diverting. But the EPA estimates there's something like 590 million or billion tons of construction waste and about 75% is usable going back into landfills every year. So it's significant, and we're just scraping the surface on it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, we're in the same situation where we don't have that overall data. But it also begs a question about the role of municipalities in the management. So I don't know if in Oregon or Arizona, but here, we're just at the beginning part of getting sufficient buy-in to create transfer stations that are either, a public-private entity that manage, the materials together, so a greater percentage can be diverted, as opposed, I know that, several other reuse organizations have had presence at our dump sites. But what we'd like to see is a relationship with our municipality where there's a more intentional effort, jointly to facilitate, more comprehensive reuse.
We're looking for the same and working with our local municipalities to try to establish partnerships that would create reuse centers as opposed to so that the product comes to us in a better, more reusable form. And that's much more likely if either deconstruction is happening or if we're picking up from the homeowner's site. So partnerships with municipalities is critical, I think, to advancing this concept.
The best example of that I've seen in the country is down in Monterey, California, at Marina, where the transfer site has the Last Chance Mercantile. It's actually a 20,000 square foot building that is owned by the municipality, and that as you come across the scale, they'll divert any reusable material down to there, and basically you can get the stuff for virtually nothing at a reuse center. And so it's a very slick operation where the landfill actually owns the reuse site and manages it and makes sure that the product doesn't go to the pit. It's very slick.
Do any of you receive support from local, state, regional, or federal government?
Yeah, lots.
Gary, go ahead.
It depends on what you're looking for. So, on the charity side, obviously lots. On the public side, we have contracts with the public sector to divert the mattresses, do the appliance recycling, do the polystyrene recycling. All those things are contracts that we have. And so, those wonderful contracts help pay a lot of money to us in both Oregon and California. But again, that's where we're making ourselves useful to the industry. Same way with the waste haulers. Waste haulers are now approaching us and saying, we'd like to take some of our troubled material, send them to you for processing so we can drive up our recycling rates, both in Oregon and California. So yeah, public-private support, very by contract generally.
Karen or Nancy?
We do not currently have any contracts, and I think one of the differences is that we're really focused on building material reuse, and that is not as much a city or municipality issue because the landfills are held privately and not within the city. So, you know, that's a big difference. I think that in terms of waste diversion and sustainability for our communities, that's the conversation we're trying to have with our local municipalities to show them that even though this might not be processed through your processing stations, it's still an issue in your community. And by working with us to divert this in a more efficient and effective manner, it'll help all of us.
Yeah, we're in conversation with our county now, and there does seem to be finally some interest in developing. We're in a very, very large county right outside of DC, and it has really dense urban population and a very large rural population as well. So we're talking in the more urban areas of creating a large reuse transfer station, which would then become a feedstock vehicle for what we'd like to see is local neighborhood sort of facilitated enterprises. So it's not just necessarily all managed by one nonprofit, but there's some way that we're helping to build, you know, wealth resources in local under-resourced communities. So that's been really an exciting recent development. And then, of course, we've been trying to get a contracts with the county. And I know this is true. I'm sure Karen talks to this, and other reuse centers like ours have been trying to get contracts for reuse because they're paying for recycling. So Terry talked about his contracts for all these different kinds of recycling, but they haven't been paying for reuse. So part of really, you know, really advocating with municipalities and with cities is to get them to understand the real value in the conversion of materials and how that can be, it's something worth investing in and providing contracts for. So I think that a lot of us are at this point of really trying to get local public entities to support what we're doing.
Yeah, you might want to think about something else, and that is that, especially in your world, Karen and Nancy, you might want to get licensed as a hazmat dealer, so you can deconstruct a product under contract, because get paid for hazmat for asbestos and lead abatement in housing. But that also gives you the ancillary benefit of saying, oh, by the way, I'll charge you for this part. I'll charge you a lower fee for the rest of the deconstruction. It would be a one-stop shop for both sides. Just a thought.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's really clear to me from talking to different folks around the country is that these kinds of operations, the business model that they need to run are not all the same. DC is very different than Arizona, I'm sure. It's different than upstate New York. And so Terry, and you guys have really got a corner on the market there for a lot of different ways you're approaching this. But it's just really interesting to see the necessity for approaching them based on the kind of place where you are and the construction of the waste industry in that particular place. Like Karen, you're talking about, your landfill is private, our landfill is public. So we do have access, but the quality of the materials that go there are just horrendous. So it hasn't really even been worth really dealing with. So anyway, it's an important consideration. I know a lot of people on the call are from all over the country dealing with everything is so different in every single place. And so the approach has to be really particular to those places.
So there's a question about what do you all do with items that don't sell? And as a second part to this, are you making use of any virtual reuse tools like Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist or another online tool? Who would like to go first on that one? Karen, you're unmuted. Can we get you to go first?
Sure. Waste in the waste business is a reality. Mostly because in our business model, we take everything so that we can get at the good stuff, the high quality stuff. So there is some waste involved, and disposal fees are in Arizona probably less expensive than most places in the country, but still a pretty high expense in your business model. I'd say that we discard probably about 10 or 15% of what we take in. We use a lot of different avenues before we discard. We use a tag system that allows us to determine the age of the product, and we discount as the product gets older. And then we put it out in front of the stores for free before we discard. So, but discarding is a reality of the whole process. And we've tried virtual tools. We tried them pre-COVID, we tried them during COVID. One of the biggest, and we had mild success, I think, mostly due to the fact that, so we take our primary product is cabinet sets. They are one-offs because they're coming out of somebody else's kitchen. They're not boxed, and the more you move them, the less usable they are. So we tend to struggle with shipping things that are removed from someone's home or business because there's no real easy way to ship it. There's no way to box it up. The other sort of issue we have is that the product's turning all the time. So you could put it on the virtual marketplace and it could sell in the store that day. And so the managing function of that is pretty difficult. And it's also very difficult to say, I'm going to set this aside for virtual selling, because you could actually sell it in the store. And cash flow in this business is kind of the key to it, since you're running off of retail sales of donated and mostly used product. So you don't really, at least we found, we didn't really want to hold inventory for a virtual sale when we had the potential to sell it that day in the store. But we do use Facebook Marketplace. We do use a lot of virtual tools, especially for marketing, to make sure people know what's in the stores.
Okay.
We have sort of an interesting process with, on our website, it's basically an online catalog of curated materials. And we really built this out in a more robust manner during COVID. And so it really acts as kind of a marketing magazine that signals to people, hey, look at this really cool stuff. I have to say, we get an amazing array of product here. And we're, I think, in a different situation than a lot of places around the country, because we're in the DC area is extremely wealthy. So we get a lot of unusual and interesting product. So we'll feature that on this catalog. Sorry. And literally, we will feature something, and 10 minutes later, there's 3 people at the front desk saying, where is it? And so we have found that to be an incredibly powerful merchandising mechanism for us to bring people and keep people's interest in what we're doing. We use a lot of online tools. And again, I urge people who are interested in this part of it is to sign up or get on our blog. We have stuff out there every single day. We have a marketing person who goes through the store and highlights product in the store. And we do also sell online. We sell on a luxury site called Cherish, and we also sell on eBay fairly extensively. And there are issues, as Karen mentioned, about the shipping. And that's actually, it's only really been the last 8 months, it's gotten really hairy. But we had been shipping toilets and sinks. We ship appliances. We freight stuff around the country. It is complicated. And it's not that easy, but we have sort of figured out ways to do it. And it has, again, like Terry's mentioned, it's like another slice of an income stream that we've made work. So, and we're continuously looking for those sort of beneficial slices. And there's a lot of really high value materials floating around. So we're always trying to capture those.
Do any of you include a repair services as part of your operations?
You mean for the public or for ourselves?
I believe it's for the public. No. Nancy?
We sort of have a little hybrid. We have someone here who does, we do a lot with lighting. He repairs our lighting. So if someone comes in and sees something here that isn't working the way we think it should be, we will do the repair and do that. Do they bring stuff in? They're not supposed to. Have they ever done it? Probably, but it's not something we advertise. But Yeah, and we'd like to do more, but there's, this relationship of value. A lot of stuff that comes in that's just broken is not even possible to really repair with to get any value out at the end.
I'm going to switch gears a little bit. I want to ask you all what you do for workforce development and training.
Well, that's a huge part of our business. So whether it's ex-offenders coming out of incarceration or people with multiple barriers to employment, we basically have a stepping stone approach to how to integrate those populations. So if you're dealing with someone that comes out with sex offender out of jail, very difficult for them to work in the marketplace. We have specialized areas where there is absolutely no possibility for them to misbehave. That's an enclave just for that type of population, same way in our housing. We've been developing programs for immigrant populations, so specialized ones where English is a second language, both in the training of those people and translating all of the materials that we have into their languages, and then making sure we have a translating service for those populations is a valuable tool. It's largely going to be a growing part of our world because of the labor shortages nationwide. So we feel like it's very important for us to invest in translating services and being culturally sensitive to other people around the world as they come in to replace the labor force that we just don't have. So whether it's truck driving or forklift operation or warehouse operations or whatever else, there's a training cycle inside of the organization that builds people up one step after the step.
Karen and Nancy, do either one of you want to add to that?
We don't have as robust a program as Terry's outlining, but I think I really commend their organization for that work. It's really essential. We partner with other organizations like our local St. Vincent de Paul and St. Joseph the Worker, who have reentry programs for those folks, and they refer those folks to us when we have employment openings. We also work with folks who have traumatic brain injury and also other programs where people have assisted employment opportunities, and so they can come work with us and gain those valuable skills that will help them in their life.
Our program is similar to what Karen's talking about, and we do training in partnership with local workforce development programs that will help place people at our site. We've had up to almost a third of our staff coming through those programs. We've had a lot of success. One of our assistant director of store operations came through one of those entry-level programs about 5 or 6 years ago. So it's an integral part of what we're doing here, and we are looking forward to expanding our capacity to do the more intensive training with folks.
Another question has come in about what do you think is the hardest thing to getting started?
Terry, you're muted.
So before you get there, somebody reached out to me and wanted to know how to get a hold of the Monterey Regional Waste Management District. It's just that, Monterey Regional Waste Management District. And just go online, you can get their information from them directly. Sorry, go ahead.
What do you think is the hardest piece to getting started with a reuse center or with a reuse operation?
It's the capital.
Any of you remember capital?
The capital. So, by their very nature, these are businesses that the private sector doesn't want to do because there's not enough margin in it. And as a result of that, you're going to have to invest a lot of capital up front in order to get yourself going. So you either do it the bootstrap sweat equity version, which, selling it out of the back of your pickup until it's such time as you can rent a building and go on from there. Or else you look for some, dog and pony show to go to tin cup circuit and ask people for the money. But capitalization is key. And then, of course, as I think both of you said before, cash flow is absolutely key because you get killed on the cash flow if you don't have enough money going in. So When we started mattress recycling in California 22 years ago, I raised a war chest of about $500,000 from donations and grants and loans to get that operation going. Over the next 2 years, I lost another $300,000 in cash. If we were not the size of the organization we are, we would have failed. But we finally figured it out, and then of course it's been profitable since then. But capitalization in a close margin industry is key.
Nancy or Karen, what about staffing? Did you start with volunteers? What part does that play in getting started?
Well, let me just go back and before we get to the staffing question, is one of the things I think that's different now than it was some years back. And it's also, I think, again, it's a place-based specificity, and the West Coast and the East Coast are not the same. So I will say on the East Coast, what is happening with real estate and land issues is going to be prohibitive. The level of capitalization you would need to make this work right now, I think, is really different than it was 16 years ago when Community Forklift was starting. The industrial and commercial, the lower end industrial and commercial real estate markets in the DC area have vacancy rates of about 2 to 3%. So there is no property available that is even in your wildest dreams that is affordable. And we're dealing with this now because our landlord is actually wanting us to move off our current property. And so I'm in the midst of looking for additional properties. And that's going to really make us or break us, whether we find the right real estate arrangement. And it's complicated. We're looking at possible mixed use development of developing a property where we should have affordable housing on it. I know that Terry's program, when I was out there, they're not on the same site. The warehouses and the processing are on one large, there's a lot of land. We're talking about the possibility of creating a site with commercial use for a reuse center on the same site as possibly housing or some other type of commercial or retail activities. And that's because there's investors who are interested, who can make money off of their side, interested in supporting nonprofit and environmental stewardship on the other side. So what's happening right now is making it much more difficult. But Terry's right, on the level of, if you had sufficient capitalization, if you had $10 or $12 million in DC to buy a warehouse property, you could go. But, raising $10 or $12 million, for a community-based thrift store, basically, is a hard sell. So it's a very difficult, it's a changing environment, and it's a difficult environment. And that's where finding some hybrid or relationships where getting, support and funding from public entities is really critical, because that's where the bigger bucks are.
Yeah, Nancy, you're right about the mixed use. Finding a way to do a Section 42 tax credit deal for affordable housing with a commercial node associated with it, then using the new market tax credits to fund that portion of it.
Exactly.
Gives you the 25% to 30% equity into the property and into the business. Then if you can go back to the AHP program and some of the federal home loan programs, to get the borrowed money that you need to get going up to the next tier, you can indeed piece it together. The only encouragement I would have on that one to you is that the dealers, the developers that develop affordable housing back in your part of the world, who I know, would like to skin you alive.
Oh, just sharks.
Just be very, very, very careful with those guys.
A question has come in about, have you seen any growing interest in materials coming from commercial projects or larger scale projects compared to those coming in from residents?
We've started to have those conversations here in the Phoenix metro area because there's so much large scale commercial and residential building going on. And we see that as a potential new revenue stream for us, because the amount of excess material related to those projects is significant. And at this time, it appears to go to the landfills.
Nancy or Terry, do you want to add to that?
Well, So we're in the land of wildfires. And what we're seeing is that the public sector is having struggles rehousing people that are being displaced by the massive fires we have out in this part of the world. And so we've actually made an alliance with the legislature to fund a manufacturing facility that will pump out 5 new mobile homes a day. So they funded us with $15 million out of the last legislative session to set up a manufacturing facility for that type of effort. Out of that then comes all of the trade school stuff that we're going to get that labor force, and all of that then feeds into the various parts of St. Paul that would supply that, whether it's the rebuilt appliances or whether it's the materials that I would be getting from the mattresses and whatever else from the rest of the organization. All of that just feeds into this effort to rehouse people in this part of the world. So contracts are available for that kind of stuff.
Okay. How do you think government can foster growth in this industry, in the reuse industry sector?
Product stewardship bills. So that product stewardship bills around the country are growing in numbers, whether it's for polystyrene or styrofoam cups or paper bags versus plastic bags, or whether it's packaging materials. There's a lot of product stewardship opportunities out there to get the various industries out there to conform to getting their product back after they've manufactured it. So whether it's the prescription drug take back programs or packaging ones, as I said before, or whether it's the electronics or the paint or whatever else, product stewardship bills are one of the most effective ways in blue or red states to get to the end goal that you want, is diversion from the landfill. And that kind of effort, I think, is probably going to be key in order to decrease the amount of flow going into waste streams.
I think also focus on promoting deconstruction, whether it just be for promotion, education, incentive, ordinance, executive order, however it's done. Deconstruction in the building material reuse realm is critical in terms of providing high quality product, and also those same opportunities related to excess building material, because as we just were chatting about, excess building material is huge in terms of large scale and small scale projects. There is a significant amount of excess material available. And I think the other key is it's got to be focused on reuse. There is a lot of activity around recycling and recycling ordinances and grants, but there is not, at least in the Arizona area, there's not a lot focused on reuse.
Yeah, and I think the idea of operational contracts for reuse facilities, in addition to more kind of public-private partnerships around reuse transfer activities, so it can be streamlined and consolidated in a way that the materials can be captured at a better stage, and then really redistributed back into communities. It needs to be, it's a hit or miss process across the country. There's little projects here and there, but there hasn't been any really, Terry's operation is probably in some ways the largest scale. And some of the places where there's the efforts towards the other thing that I think that helps this is not only legislation regarding deconstruction, but also work on zero waste. When there's a bigger umbrella that speaks to the zero waste vision and commitment of municipalities, all of a sudden people are energized, and intellectual capital is brought in to really think about how to make this work on a larger scale. And I think that we're at a point where that's really critically necessary.
Carrie, there's a question about, is it possible to sanitize and reuse mattresses, or can they only be recycled?
A substantial amount can be both reused and rebuilt. So we have a rebuilding operation for mattresses. Actually, it's a growing part of the business, especially as we dumb down our mattress product into a stupid bed in a box that you buy from online and bring it into your house, and it wears out in 5 years. So that product actually can be reprocessed and cut up into pet beds, which is really a good use for it. But It depends on your state code. In the Northeast, if you use Sterafab on a mattress, it'll then be allowed to be reticketed and put back out in the marketplace. Diane is aware of this up in Ithaca, that the rebuilding operations are here, there, and the other place for somebody who wants to rebuild mattresses for Cornell or whatever else. And the rebuilding operations in the Northeast are actually fairly robust. They're very under this radar screen right now. But at any given time, probably 20% of your mattresses can be reused or rebuilt at any given time. Most of them are, by the way. So when you have the hotel chains changing out mattresses on a 5-year rotation, what ends up happening is that those don't go to the landfill. They're bought by another vendor that puts it into a lower grade hotel. So some of that's kind of an invisible trade, but the rest of them actually end up being rebuilt. And there's a very robust rebuilding operations in New York, in the state of New York in particular, but also in Georgia and Chicago and elsewhere. Yeah, that's very possible to do.
And for Karen or Nancy, oh shoot, I just lost that question. Hold on for 1 second. Does anybody reuse drywall?
I haven't come across reusing used drywall other than a couple of years back. I believe there was somebody here in Phoenix area crushing it up to feed the pigs. But I don't know, Nancy, if you've seen anybody reuse used drywall. That one I haven't seen.
Yeah, there was somebody a few years ago that was trying to repurpose that stuff. So they take the drywall, grind it up, and then blend it in with new drywall, which is a really bad idea. Just didn't work.
So another question, do any of you have people coming through preparing to replicate your business? And how can you facilitate that growth?
Well, in our case, as for you guys probably, we have a mentoring arm. It's called the Cascade Alliance. And if you're interested in creating a waste-based business, you get a hold of us. And if it's a good fit for us, basically we want to make sure there's jobs and employment for low-income people that are coming out of it, and that you're dealing with a waste-based business, then we'll help mentor you up into that next level. You can always talk to Diane about that too.
Karen, do you want to?
Yeah, years ago, probably 10 years ago, we had someone from Southern California come over and meet with us about replicating our business. And I think that was the only one. And I think to Terry's and Nancy's point about what would it take to start one of these, the issue really is capitalization and how much it takes to make this sustainable. And so haven't had anybody recently ask to talk about it, but I'd be open to talking to folks about what it takes.
Yeah, I mean, over the years, we've had a number of people come through or contact us because they're interested in getting assistance. And I mean, we're also happy to talk with folks. I think it's been nice for me. I've been talking to Diane and in upstate New York and to Jackie, who runs the Rebuilding Center out in Portland. And those conversations have been really exciting and vital and interesting. So it's a change. I think it's a really changing landscape, and there's some, it probably would be useful, to be available to provide information for people that are interested in starting centers in their own areas. Now, so Marian, the other thing that it might be interesting is, in Philly, the Philly store that just lost their bricks and mortar had a lot of challenges. And I think one of the things that was clear to me was that the guy who was the executive director, who I don't really know, if executive directors and leadership in these organizations were supporting each other and talking to each other more, we could help each other. Sometimes one of us knows about something that the other one doesn't know, or has ideas, or just a wealth. As you can see, there's just a wealth of knowledge. So, just knowing that people need that help and support would help, us maintain this movement across the country.
Mhm. And this is we've gone through all of the questions through the chat. I have one last question for each of you. In your vision of what you would like to see both for your facilities or for reuse as a bigger topic, what would you like to see happen?
Well, I'll start off since I'm the unmuted one. I think that for Stardust Vision, we are looking at developing concepts that are more reuse resource center oriented. And I really liked Nancy's concept of a multi-use concept facility, but in partnership with local municipalities, we'd like to develop large scale reuse resource centers that would combine both recycling and reuse in one space. And we think that this model, once it's developed, could be replicated in both small towns and also anywhere across the country. And in terms of reuse in general, I think that this is a concept that really needs to be embraced. It is a concept that will make a substantive change in our communities and in our environment, and really trying to remember that reuse is a higher best use than recycling, and hoping that people will look at reuse first before they start to look at recycling opportunities.
Well, so there are niche opportunities everywhere, and it would be nice to be ahead of them instead of behind them. So for example, the industry, the refrigeration industry is moving away from CFC gases, and they're going to be going more and more to ammonia-based gas appliances for a variety of environmental reasons. That gas, ammonia gas is deadly if you just release it. It's not a greenhouse gas, but it's not polluting as much as it's just hideous. And if you came up with a way to recycle those appliances over the next 10 years nationwide, you would basically capture a market. There is no recycling equipment currently available in the world to recycle ammonia-based residential systems. So finding a way to get ahead of that would be a good way. Likewise, there are opportunities, as I say, everywhere in the country for a different niche. Finding a way to bring the resources together to help with those niches is a really big deal. And the example I give, the final one, is that with mattress recycling, that was opposed by the industry for years. Connecticut and Rhode Island went ahead and passed a stewardship bill. California passed a stewardship bill after that. Oregon just passed its stewardship bill. Washington is working on one. Massachusetts has a really bizarre one that's actually going into effect now. I think that's what's going to happen is that nationwide, there's going to be a national mandate at some point to do mattress recycling in every municipality in the country. When that happens, it's a perfect niche for nonprofits. They'll go ahead and just dive into it because we already got the business model set up. So finding a way to push that, I think would be a valuable way to create jobs and employment and to get you niched into the market where the nonprofit is a valuable portion to the industry, both with the garbage industry and the landfills and the local municipalities. When you become an essential part of their system, you're at the table.
Mm-hmm.
So Marianne, we really had a vision. We're on a 12-acre site, and our vision had been to create a kind of eco commons in our under-resourced community, to provide a place where, through the use and resource acquisition of the materials, was to provide opportunities for individual learning and development of small business enterprises. Had a lot of conversation in our community about worker-owned cooperatives and the importance of the type of structures that the funds and materials are available to support. So we're looking at the development of smaller enterprises that can really bring vitally needed resources directly to the communities. What we're seeing now in the public sector is a complete diminishment of resources for low-income people. And as those areas of resources shrink, materials and assets and resources from the waste industry can, to some extent, work to supplant some of that and provide employment opportunities, training opportunities, learning, and critically needed home materials for substandard housing that we see in really significant numbers here along the East Coast.
Well, I want to thank you all. This has been truly a learning experience for me, as I'm sure everyone, and based on the chat that is happening, it's just so robust. It's there's just so much information here. We all have a lot to learn. So I want to thank our presenters for taking the time to share your expertise with all of us. I also want to thank everyone for so enthusiastically participating in the chat. I want to let you all know that we have our next reuse forum scheduled for December 7. It will be about building materials and the built environment's impact on climate. So you will all be receiving information about that. And I do want to address one issue that has risen up on the chat. Is people were asking for the contact information for everyone who registered on this forum. And because we didn't ask permission to do that, we are not able to release that list, but I will incorporate that into the registration for the next forum to see if people are willing to share their contact information. And if so, we can make that available. But until we do that, we're just not able to share it right now. Okay, well, thank you, everyone. Have a great afternoon. I will hopefully see you all in December for our next reuse forum. Bye-bye.